Hey, in this video I'm going to go over a event-driven architecture example that I made in Composer. What we're going to do is I'll explain it, I'll show you that it works, and then we'll sort of go through what it was like to build it by recreating it ourselves on the canvas. So let's talk about this. First of all, I got these groups around parts of the app. And you can see I got reporting service and order service. The idea around this is that we're going to have an order service that takes in orders, and then we're going to have a reporting service that listens on those orders and gives us some sort of nice report in as a front end. Now, when making an order service, what I do know is that I want to record the start and end of these orders. Where those orders are coming from, I don't really know where they're going to come from yet, and that doesn't need to stop me. Because we're doing an event-driven architecture, we can build this part out, hook it up to some events. Maybe we switch that up for API Gateway down the road, or maybe these events are coming from some other part of our system that we'll just pick up on using an event bridge rule or of some kind. The cool thing about doing event-driven architectures is that we don't really need to make that decision right now. We can just build it in a decoupled way and figure that out later on. So what I have here is a set order start Lambda function. It's going to write an order into the table. It's going to be triggered by an order started event. We have a set order complete triggered by an order completed event, and that's going to write into the table. So pretty simple. It's also going to emit events onto an order event bus, event bridge event bus. In order to make my life easier, I'm going to have a development triggers, and this is a really nice way to work when you're doing event-driven stuff. So what I have here is a Lambda function that simulates orders. So it's going to start an order and then wait a random amount of time and then complete that order. And I'm going to trigger that two ways. One is with an event, so I can manually trigger it in the console or using a terminal or something, however I want. But then I also am going to trigger this every 10 minutes. It could be every 1 minute. I worked on a project once where every 1 minute we were randomly creating events. It could be like 40 or 60 events, and with random parameters. And they were just flowing through our system as we were developing. And it was a super awesome way to work because it was constantly being validated. Like you could consider that a canary, but it was like a canary in a development scenario, and it was great. It's such a cool way to work and to test your system as you're working. So these are my development triggers. It is going to fire onto the event bus, so it's going to be creating order started and completed events, and then this thing is going to pick up on it. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a reporting service, which is going to listen on order details stored, which is the thing that happens here. So whenever an order has completed and it's stored in the database, the reporting service is going to pick up on that, and it's going to take note of the wait time, and then it's going to store that in a database. And it's also going to provide a front end with a Lambda function that's going to be able to query that database and just show like what are our orders, what are the wait times. Are they good or are they not good? And you can see that right here. So what I have is a Lambda function with a function URL. And these, I had this going since last night. So these are all the orders that have been coming in. We can see the order wait time. Some of them are good. Some of them are not so good. I can paginate through this thing. And I'm paginating through the DynamoDB table at this point. And so, great. We got our development triggers firing things into the order service, and then we got a reporting service telling us what's going on based on what's going on in the ordering service here. And so the cool thing about event-driven stuff is that it's really easy to add on. I could make some other microservice or whatever that's listening for like the amount that people are spending or something, per store, and it would just be another box in here that's listening on this event bus. Okay, sweet. So let's quickly go over the code. This generates a SAM template and a bunch of functions. So let's look at the source. We got our functions here. Let's start off with the simulate order. So if we go to simulate order, it's quite simple. Emit order started, complete, wait a random amount of time, and this is what it does here. So pretty simple. Next we have order started. So let's look at that order started function. Pretty simple. Validate some stuff and then set the order into the database, keyed by store store ID and an order, and then some random order ID. And we're storing total and timestamp of some kind. Next, we got the set order complete. So let's look at that. Similar sort of thing, you validate a bunch of stuff, and then it's going to do a update on this same record. And so what it's going to do is it's going to check if the complete timestamp is set. If it's not set, it's going to go ahead and do that. If it's already been set, then it's not going to update it anymore because that's already happened. So that's kind of a nice little check that we can do in a single DynamoDB call. And then it's going to emit a order details stored event, which is what we wanted to pick up on here. So that's what this guy is connected to on the event bus. So simulate order fires an event to the event bus. It gets picked up here and here. And then the set order complete is going to fire an event on the event bus, which is going to get picked up here. Great. Let's look at the record wait time, which is this guy right here. It's just a single JS file. You'll notice I really like working this way. No node modules. I mean, I got the AWS SDK. That can do a bunch of stuff for me. Really like it when my Lambda functions can be like super simple, a single JS file. In this case, we're getting away with being able to do that because our functions are so focused and single purposed. So in this case, record wait time, it is going to record the wait time in its own database, and it's going to, n minus start. Let's record that. And finally, this function here, it's a Lambda function. You often don't, well, I'll just say for me, when I think about Lambda functions, I'm thinking about backend, data processing or something like that. This is for the front. It's going to serve a front end for us. How does it do it? I don't see an API gateway here. It's going to use function URLs. You can set that, right? Create function URL right here, which is kind of nice. Maybe you'll want to put a CDN in front of this or something. There's more that we could do here, but right now we're just using a function URL to serve up the front end. What this is going to do, let's look at the code. Wait time front end. This one's a little bit more to it. We're going to get the data and make HTML. So we're going to get some query parameters, get the data, make some HTML. The get the data looks like this. It is a DynamoDB query. And then the make HTML is just going to fs get a few things such as HTML and styles CSS. It's going to put it all together using some, JS replace, string manipulation, pretty simple, nothing too fancy going on here. And then we got our HTML and CSS in this file here. So that is what makes this thing go. And then you can see these query parameters when I press next. I'm giving it a new cursor on the DynamoDB table, so it gives me the next page of data. So there you go. That is the app. Now let's take a look at what it was like to build this thing. So I'm going to wipe this canvas clean, and we'll start from scratch. Okay, so I'm going to select a new folder, and we'll go to that one, and we'll click yes, create. We got nothing here, and this is my file. So let's sort of go through that whole process. When I was thinking about this, I figured, well, let's start with the Lambda function. No, I gotta do that. And I was thinking I have to have a set order started and set order complete. And I didn't know what was going to be triggering this thing. I knew it was going to be a DynamoDB table. We're going to store this stuff in here. And we'll just call this orders table. But I didn't know what was going to be triggering it. And as you can see in the final result, we still at this moment don't know what we're going to be triggering it. And that is totally fine because we can decouple ourselves from that concern by just sticking an event right in front of it, event rule. Group it together. We got 1/3 of our service here already. So, I mean, this is quite fast. Next, I wanted to trigger these events. But what are these events talking on? I wanted to do my own custom event bus. So by default, these things are going to be listening on the default event bus in your account. But I wanted to have my own custom event bus. And currently, Composer does not have that as a resource we can drag on the canvas. And so at this point, you might be tempted to stop and say, oh, if they don't support an event bus, I guess I can't do what I want to do. The great thing about Composer is that it can understand any cloud formation. And so what we can do instead, if it's not supported, is we could work the way we would have worked without Composer in a SAM template. We can just work in that template, just add it in the template. So what I'm going to do is copy this order event bus and go into my template and edit the code as I normally would have in a SAM project. And look at that, it's here. We can see it, we can drag it, we can group it. It's not stopping us at all. That's great. So the next thing I'm going to want to do is to be able to give the set order complete permissions to write to this data, to this event bus, put events onto the event bus. So I'm going to do, going to add an environment variable to the order, start order, where is it? Set order complete. So we'll do this. And we'll add a policy. You could imagine this is likely what a line is going to do once this is implemented. There we go. We have this line here. So like we can, even though it's not supported, I mean, we can still do this. Because the canvas can listen on the changes of the template, you can just code it up. It's not one way. You don't have to choose between working on the canvas or coding. You could just do both. And maybe down the line in the future, we'll have the event bus as a thing we can drag on and a line we can draw manually. But for now, we can do this, and it's not stopping us. Okay, great. So next, I was like, I want to trigger this thing because I don't want to manually go into Lambda console and fire this. Which that's not a bad way to work, but when we have events, I mean, just fire events. So I'm going to drag another Lambda function on. I'm going to call it simulate, simulate, something like that. And I'm going to drag an event on here. And this is going to fire an event onto that. So let's go ahead and manually do our thing. So where is the simulate serverless function? So we need to add I'm just going to copy this whole thing and then take out some stuff. So simulate, get rid of that, get rid of that. Great, we're in business. I'm going to group that. Nice. And then we're going to add that schedule in there as well. And we'll connect that. Great, we have 2/3 of our service ready to go. Of course, we've got to write the code as well, right? We're skipping that part because that's the part everybody who has written the SAM template or a project kind of is familiar with already. The next thing I want to do, let's name these groups here. So I'm going to do order service, and this is going to be my dev triggers. I'm going to click the arrange button just to like clean up those lines. So whenever you edit stuff, basically, you see how the line snapped? It's because now it's kind of in manual draw mode, but then when you arrange, it'll always clean up those lines. Okay, the next thing I want to do is create that order service. So I'm going to create a Lambda function. I'm going to create a DynamoDB table, connect that together, group that, and let's call this the reporting service. And we want this to be on a event trigger of some kind. So there we go. Nope, not there. We want to do it here. Thanks for helping me out. Error message. And the final thing to all of this is to create a Lambda function that does our front end. And we're going to connect that directly to the table here. And let's call this front end. And you might be thinking like, okay, well, it's just a Lambda function. It's not connected to anything. How do you make it have a URL? If you scroll down, couldn't be easier. Click this thing and save. There we go. It has a URL. There it is. Like that's what I did.